Now let's learn how to orbit your gimbal. An orbit is where you walk in a circle around your subject, keeping them centered. This is a pretty challenging, more advanced kind of shot because you have to really know how well the gimbal responds to the movement of your hands. The important thing with an orbit is that you maintain the same distance from your subject at all times. So you have to imagine a circle around your subject, and you're walking around the perimeter of that circle. There in the center of the circle, you're walking around the perimeter. So what I usually do is I look at the headroom above my subject. If I start to notice that the headroom's decreasing, I'm getting too close. If the headroom's increasing too much, then I'm getting too far back. So I know I'm keeping a constant distance if that headroom stays the same throughout the shot. You want to be in pan follow only mode. The gimbal is only following your pan. And you also want to make sure that your gimbal is not set to pan too quickly. Sometimes the default pan settings of a gimbal are really fast, which makes it super hard to do a smooth orbit because then every tiny movement of your hand results in a big jump. So figure out how to slow down the speed of your gimbal response a bit if you plan on doing an orbit. With this particular gimbal, I set the speed to 40. Before you start your orbit, you might want to set your focus to manual. It depends on how good your autofocus is on your camera, but some autofocus, especially with face tracking, will lose the subject when you move around behind them. So if you plan on keeping the same distance from your subject for the entire orbit, then get your focus while the subject's facing you, and then switch over to manual focus like I just did. That way, the focus won't change, as long as I keep the same distance between myself and Anna throughout the entire shot. If you want to change your distance from the subject, it can look kind of cool. Like you might want to move in toward them while you orbit for a dramatic effect. So I'll show you how that looks. You also got to watch out for your shadow when you do an orbit. If the sun is shining directly at any sort of an angle to you, then at some point during that 360-degree spin, your shadow is probably going to fall on your subject. So one way to avoid getting your shadow on your subject is to move back and zoom in. That way your shadow will fall on the ground in front of you instead of on your subject. Another way is simply to move your shot to a different place. Like if we don't have to be in a spot that has direct sun, we can just move into the shade. Or you could just not do a 360 orbit. Just note the part where your shadow is and don't go there with the gimbal. Plan your shot around that. Make sure that you never hit that point.